The Coming of the COVID Kid by Roberto Servicio, Gibson's Landing, British Columbia. A bunch of peeps were protesting their way up to Parliament Hill. Greta the Great was talk of the town, but action from Trudeau was nil. Millions had hoped for leadership now as a climate emergency grew, and watching this all from a faraway place was a virus nobody knew. Hope filled the air. There was momentum for sure. Increasing numbers did care, but many did not. It was clear they had fought to engage what was under their hair. So pipelines got built, LNG pressed ahead, carbon curve continued to rise, and lost on us all, a little voice called, perhaps it's time for surprise. It was the COVID kid, that wee little thing. He was waiting for a world to come. His hideout was tight, so he stayed out of sight till New Year 2020 had begun. The time seemed so right, so the kid set his sights on the Chinese town of Wuhan. No gunfight here, just fever and fear. Then suddenly, this outlaw moved on. The killer went stealth, had a hate-on for health, so sickness and death quickly came, as hand-washing oops and hanging in groups continued unchecked just the same. It was clear that the threat was equally met with ignorance, hubris, and calm. So the kid rode off on a fast global gallop like a slow-motion healthcare time bomb. Some folks were ready, others were not, when the grave COVID kid arrived. The Kiwis just knew they'd have to spread out if they were going to survive. Others were caught with their pants at their knees and full of bizarre nonchalance. Their sheriffs asleep, not doing their job, the townfolk in a gullible trance. South Korea went down, then Italy too. Soon it was Spain, Brazil, Russia, and the UK. But falling the hardest while their sheriff was off golfing, the town known as the US of A. Sheriff Twitter went after this invisible hombre who'd taken his economy down. His six-shooter fired lies, excuses, and blame, like an emperor without any gown. Trillions were spent to shock start the show and get his town right back to work. But meanwhile, the kid quietly hid in Trumpville, where duty was shirked. The Orange Man wanted to reopen the place, even though a gunslinger was close. So his brain fart took shape to fight off the kid by injecting some bleach with each dose. While the law in those parts worried more about polls than lives taken out by the kid, elsewhere there were towns who quickly got down to ensuring the virus was rid. Measures were taken, lockdowns put in place, masks and shields spread out near and far, 2-week quarantines and empty street scenes, and no one going out to the bar. In the big quiet that followed, wild nature returned to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Coyotes, raccoons, pumas, foxes, baboons, wild critters on the loose without care. In no time at all, the world flipped on its head, many givens soon taken away, but our humanity remained, kindness quickly unchained, with more beauty on every new day. Each night, when the clock struck 7 p.m., neighbors would burst forth with loud cheer. There were howls, bells, horns, pots, pans, old and worn, for the brave frontline folk so dear. Not wanted posters were up, all schools closed down. Cafes no longer did serve. There was a run on TP, hand sani, PPEs, and slowly a few flattened curves. Planes left the sky, air quality high, rivers, oceans, and lakes breathed relief. The con game was over for coal, oil, nat gas, with fossil fuels in sheer disbelief. All the talk from last year was abundantly clear. Cut carbon emissions by half. Either make this to be by 2030, or the planet would have the last laugh. So in just the first months with the kid running rogue, carbon levels had dropped in the air. Yes, the kid was a curse, but also did nurse small recovery on a much bigger scare. The climate chaos boss was all about loss, creating havoc and harm every day. Wildfires, heat waves, superstorms, and flood rage were signs he was having his way. So the kid had effect on this much bigger threat, and chaos had backed off a bit. But townfolk just knew to deal with these two, their consumption of stuff would be hit. The lessons were tough from outlaws so rough that less was the new form of more. Lives were simply too big, being local, the new gig, and the need to show big oil the door. As people emerged from the shuttered show of their lives and into their world once again, they felt in their hearts they would have to restart a new normal, more real and sane. It was time for the kid to ride into the sunset and hopefully never come back, but they realized he could, and chaos sure would, if leadership didn't change tack. It was a moment in time like never before, a long overdue humble pie, served up as a wake-up, a sobering shake-up by a virulent, villainous guy. History may bill it as a worldwide crash. Herstory, when humanity was reborn. But nobody will argue lessons were learned. A key one, we need a new norm. With the great reckoning here, big changes in gear, the world pulling out of a skid, the question lives on, from here to beyond. Were we rescued by the COVID kid? The end. Or maybe a new beginning.